Hello guys, welcome back. I am Captain Foley, and today I am joined by my first in command, Commander Cockings, as well as by a special guest.
Yes, we have the very talented Bill Krause joining us today for today's episode. Welcome to Trekyards, Bill.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, welcome Bill. It is an honor to have you join us. Mr. Krause is joining us today because he was the winner of last summer 2015's Star Trek Model Contest over on the Facebook page, Star Trek Modelers Group. People submitted their very own original Trek designs to be judged, and the winner was to get a full Trekyards episode on that design.
The contest was run by Michael Payton and was judged by Mr. Payton, Paul Lewis, Tobias Richter, Doug Drexler, Rick Sternberg, Andrew Probert, Norman Eisen, Terry Burke, myself, and of course, Cam Foley. There were some truly fantastic designs which made the judging process pretty damn difficult. The four runners-up have received Trekyards mission briefings on their designs, but now it's time for the full Trekyards of the USS Shangri-La. And sorry it took so long, but the 3D model did take a little while to make. Just get everything ready and fine-tuned. But here we are. It's going to be good.
So let's get right into it and talk about the Shangri-La class.
The Shangri-La class was an attack cruiser designed as a fast, immediate tactical response and surgical strike and frontline vessel. The model for this new specialized class was Gladius Fortis Defendant, which translates to the sword protects the bold.
The Shangri-La has a length of 295 metres, a beam of 142 metres, and displacement of 272,000 metric tonnes. It's about the same size as the Constitution class refit at 305 metres, so only about 10 metres shorter.
Now, being stout, compact, and well-armed, this ship was developed for high sustained speed and endurance, and had a more tactical mission profile as opposed to the Constitution class's more scientific or multi-role mission. In short, these ships would be better at doing special ops missions that would allow the Enterprise and the other string of multi-purpose ships of Starfleet the luxury of doing the kind of strategic, less focused, detached, semi-military jobs that they were designed to do.
Propulsion for the ship consisted of two LN-68 Mod 1 warp drives, giving it a maximum emergency speed of warp 8.75. Being the fastest of all other ships in the fleet, the LN-68 coils are in fact a much more robust version of the standard coils found in other ships of the time. This allowed two advantages: longer sustained top speed operation, or extremely quick bursts of speed for shorter distances, as well as longer times between overhauls.
The new warp cores were less prone to burnout and feedback damage, so replacement was very rarely needed. As with other ship design features, these new cores and configurations were seen later in the Excelsior class of starship. Defensive capabilities were improved, without impacting the speed, by bringing the nacelles down to the gravity plane of the saucer. The lower, more squat profile also increased the ship's combat maneuverability by moving things closer to the central mass of the ship. This also put less strain on the ship's shield generators and increased overall effectiveness, as the shields were not required to stretch as much further as was needed, also sporting better placed manoeuvring thrusters than any other ships of the period, greatly increasing combat efficiencies.
Overall endurance and the ability to stay on station for prolonged periods and then respond to an incident immediately was also greatly improved. Twin impulse drive generators, complete with the robust nature of this new design, made for a very, very responsive and maneuverable craft, which was capable of tangling with the most dangerous threats in Starfleet's known enemies' inventories. Accelerating up to full impulse speed was at least 68% faster than that of the Connie's impulse configuration.
Wow.
In fact, it was this new impulse design that eventually evolved into the impulse drives we later see on the Excelsior in Star Trek III, those being the most powerful impulse engines up to that time. The Shangri-La's new drive configuration had dual impulse crystals for redundancy purposes, located on the underside of the impulse modules, and proved very successful.
So successful that in fact many later starship designs incorporated this dual impulse drive configuration even into the TNG era and beyond. Having twin independently mounted impulse drives increased power efficiency and provided a redundancy in the event that one of these drives became damaged somehow.
The ship was well armed, featuring 8 twin turret high-output phaser mounts, which produced about 25% more energy output than those of the Connie. 6 pairs ring the upper and lower primary hull. A single pair of lower ventral phasers were located midship on the secondary hull, and 2 single banks on the stern, just above the shuttle bay. As well, the ship had a newly developed forward bow-mounted weapons package that consisted of 3 photon torpedo tubes and 1 aft-facing tube located at the rear of the dorsal spine. Due to these new design integrations, the ship was constructed on an entirely new style of space frame, which was reinforced to withstand not only impacts from enemy fire, but also be easily replaceable with new weapons modules or loadouts that Starfleet wanted to incorporate into later refits.
The space frame design had a 50-year life expectancy before any major impulse or warp engine replacements would be considered mandatory. This ship, in fact, acted as a test bed for the new series of both warp nacelle improvements and weapons modules, due in large part to its stronger, more robust construction methods.
Embarked craft capacity is given over to a specialised auxiliary craft role. The main hangar deck has on board storage of approximately 12 shuttlecraft, with the general complement of smaller craft consisting of 6 standard shuttles, 2 long-range shuttles, and the remainder being specialised craft, such as assault shuttles or fighters. However, if the mission called for it, all of the craft may be replaced with fighters as needed.
In this situation, around 20 small fighters could be on board and ready for action. Scientific labs were also half that of the Constitution class of the same era. Also, 2 high-output tractor emitters were installed in all variations of this design. These were heavy-duty versions of what we had seen in other ships of the day.
The Shangri-La and her sister ships were intended to operate in pairs or as part of a specialized task force. Their primary mission was intelligence gathering, but should the Federation need to show tactical force or fly the Federation flag in areas of dispute, this ship was used for that purpose, usually in conjunction with either a heavy cruiser or dreadnought.
The ship was designed to be a bruiser and a direct response to the Vija incident of 2273. The final design and shakedown trials of the Shangri-La, NCC 2575, ended in 2286 when the ship went into full production, with the next 4 ships, the Camelot, Surprise, Avalon, and Sentinel, slated for the first year, and a total of 12 supplementing the fleet over the following few years. You can see the names of the other ships on the screen now.
The Shangri-La's development ran almost parallel to the Excelsior's design run, that being started only about 3 years after initial designs for the Shangri-La were completed. So these 2 ship designs were in contention, along with some other contracted designs such as the Gargarian class, which we've also done a Trekyards Originals episode on previously. With the Excelsior designers learning some things while the testing on the Shangri-La commenced, just ahead of their own testing schedule. Naturally, some design influences from the Shangri-La filtered down into the final Excelsior design. Most notably, the new style deflector dish, which is largely unaltered in the Excelsior's final design.
Shangri-La had a crew complement of 460, with a vertical interior depth of 16 decks. The interior design and look of the ship was similar to the refitted Enterprise that we see in Star Trek II. As seen from its exterior profile, however, the bridge was larger with an oval-shaped configuration. Due to this elongated design, Deck 1 consisted of more than just the bridge. It had a captain's ready room, a small tactical situation room, a conference room for the command staff, as well as a small armory. Deck 7 features a forward-facing windowed recreation area where crew or dignitaries can relax and socialize. A larger brig and interrogation area were another feature of this intelligence-gathering ship design as well. Crew cabins aboard the Shangri-La consisted of bunk-style accommodations that allowed for such a large crew in a ship of this size.
In intervening years, however, a total of 4 different variants for the Shangri-La class made appearances, such as the Ranger class variant, which consisted of 7 starships in total. This variation had redesigned cutouts at the rear of the primary hull, which featured a small winglet, very similar to other ships such as the USS Wasp. This allowed for more cargo and utility labs, making it a more multi-purpose version of the ship design. And again, we can see on screen the ships of the Ranger class. The winglets improved structural stability at high warp and increased the warp bubble coefficient and hull shielding capacities.
Some of the other variant designs were specifically designed for diplomatic missions and for carrying dignitaries to and from conferences and other important events. These ships, of course, had many of their changes incorporated into the interior of the design of the ship, allowing for larger and more comfortable accommodations suited for this mission profile.
Over the entire operational run of this class, some 60 vessels were produced of various configurations. The ship even served as an Air Force One of its day, having delivered the President of the Federation to the Kittimer Peace Accords of 2293.
In fact, 2 Shangri-La Attack Cruisers were present during the Kittimer Accords, and later some even made appearances at Wolf 359, and even in the Dwelling Wars.
Now, this next little part is restricted information for officers with level 4 access and above. So if you don't fall into that category, please skip ahead or cover your ears. Now, I'm trusting you guys on this one, okay? I think we all qualify.
Okay.
Here goes. Turns out that Section 31 even used this ship for many years and for many clandestine missions. Specialized versions of this ship would be used to infiltrate enemy territory and gather intelligence or conduct covert rescue missions as needed.
Now, this, of course, was never announced publicly or known to many of the Admiralty of the day. In fact, one vessel, the USS Navarone, NCC 2580, under coded orders from Colonel West, secretly a high-ranking member of Section 31, Navarone was under preparations to enter Klingon territorial space and mount a rescue mission of Kirk and McCoy from Rura Penthe. despite orders from the contrary from the Federation president.
However, on approaching the Klingon neutral zone, word reached the Navarone that the Enterprise had in fact beat them to the punch, as it were, without authorization, returning back to Federation space with Kirk and McCoy in tow.
Other unique abilities of this design allowed for several optional hull separation sequences, also giving the ship advantages for a variety of undercover mission profiles, with 3 separate and distinct separation sequences at the discretion of the commanding officer. A detachment of the entire saucer section at the dorsal attachment points was the first option. Next, the command deck and entire impulse module could separate from the primary hull, very similar to what we see the NSEA Protector do in Galaxy Quest.
And finally, the complete bridge module could eject as a lifeboat in space or parachute safely to the ground in an atmosphere if the ship itself was too damaged to attempt a safe landing approach factor. Operationally, the entire saucer is designed to make planetfall, as the primary is outfitted with 3 retractable landing legs, much like the Constitution's saucer section.
Cool. And now it's time for the designing portion of the show, where we ask Bill some questions about the process of creating this incredible Federation ship. So, he has one right there. So let's start off with an easy one, Bill. After hundreds of hours of building, what sparked your decision to actually design this ship, and why specifically Star Trek?
Well, Shangri-La was the first model, or scratch-built model I've done probably in 20 years. I had been raising kids in 20 years in the interim, so I had done this as a kid, a teenager, and it was my passion, my hobby, and then I kind of got out of it, and I built a model that had been in my workbench for a long time. It was a Ticonderoga. It was just out-of-the-box Enterprise that I converted, and I was thinking, yeah, I should probably do something new, and I had been scratch building for my entire life, and typically it was sci-fi models or military. It would just be whatever, just a kind of kit bashing thing. So the Shangri-La kind of took a lot of ideas I've been accumulating over the years, and I kind of just threw them all together in one package, and it was kind of like my first foray back into the hobby from a little brief.
Excellent. Yeah, I got out of the hobby too for a few years and just got back into it probably about 4 years ago. So I understand that whole getting out of it because of kids. Now, in a previous discussion with you, I remember you saying that you used the Belknap class as an inspiration for this design. That happens to actually be one of my favorites as well. And indeed, I can see the more squat profile and compact design incorporated into your Shangri-La. So as a designer, how do you start designing a ship based on another ship's design, and how does that evolve into something totally new and unique?
Well, the Belknap was the first design I had seen, had done professionally that kind of went outside the box of just the traditional bashing existing components of hull pieces. So when I first saw the Belknap, I thought, here's a unique shape. I can, probably make work for something in my project with the Shangri-La. And so it was basically in my cache of design ideas that I had when I started working on the Shangri-La. And it had these LN68 warp drives as well when they designed this Belknap, at least a version of it. So I found that these model parts were available as a third-party resin kit. So those are easy enough to throw on the model. So from there was just basically sketching out a shape. And I felt like when I first started building or designing the Shangri-La, I was collecting a lot of other reference materials, and I came across the Hornet, which was a ship that was designed back in the 1980s, I think 1985 by Larry Miller. And I saw this cutout design of the saucer, and that kind of sparked me and said, well, I can use that. I mean, it was something that was kind of neat and unique, and it was kind of a hammerhead idea that at the time was like, I'll just do that. And I find these engines from the Belknap, and I just sketch out a secondary hull, which was fairly easy to do. So within a matter of minutes, I sketched out the entire ship, and went from there.
But how long did this process actually take from beginning, if you can think back that far, to finished product? And talk us through the steps. I mean, we see this beautiful, amazing model next to us, the real physical model. It's an amazing piece. How do you make it become such a cool piece? How long did it take?
Like I said, when I saw the photo of or kind of reminded of the plans from Larry Miller of the Hornet, I knew that the primary hull was going to be a hammerhead design, and I had the engines from the Belknap. So it was just a matter of sketching out a secondary hull, which just took minutes, and I just whipped it out very quickly. I think it was August of 2014. I had just finished working on the Ticonderoga, and so looking for something else to build. And I wanted to build a ship that looked like it fit into the motion picture era, something that maybe Andy Probert would have designed, and just kind of just fell into the background. You know, it could have been in the space dock somewhere behind the Enterprise or the Reliant. So I wanted something that looked like it was part of his aesthetic. So based on that, you know, I took an old motion picture model kit that I had, was called a smoothie kit, because it wasn't yet textured with what they had done with that kit later on. But I had one original 1977 version of that model that I started working on. Just cut the hull up, and I think by the end of the year, maybe January 1st of 2015, it was basically constructed. Well, secondary hull was completely brand new. It was a sculpted piece that I sculpted out of what was called balsa foam. It's almost like floral foam. It's very thin, lightweight material that you can just shave and carve very quickly. And it was my first attempt into doing any of that stuff. So I was sculpting and molding for the first time in silicone and rubber, and pouring a resin piece for that secondary hull. And then from that, I had to construct the dorsal, which was the last thing I had done. So I had the primary, and then I had this neck piece that came down into a secondary hull, but nothing connecting it. So that was what like I said, the ship kind of designed itself, and that dorsal just had to fit that area. So I was forced to blend those pieces together. So I sculpted a piece that just fit those two units, the primary and secondary. I needed something that kind of filled that gap, as it were. And the same for the impulse engine too. I mentioned the whole impulse engine was basically just sketched out on paper as a profile from the side view. I had no idea what that would look like from the top view or the front view, and I just kind of took lines from the bridge back, and it just developed this shape that became the impulse engine. I mean, it was where it was. I didn't do anything. It was just perfect.
So I'm just looking at the design now, which is very impressive. Do you guys want to take a look at this? Here,
Sure.
Samuel, I'll pass this down to you. Got it?
It's nice. I like it. But Bill, I mean, have you seen the little one? Have you seen the little one?
I have that.
How you do?
Little one.
See, look at that.
That's awesome.
Different color though.
Okay, so ask my next question then. Once you had the basic design constructed, were there any changes or refinements you made that weren't in your original design that you just felt needed to be incorporated?
One of the things, there was a detail that was on the side of the dorsal, just by the impulse exhaust, and it just bugged me for a long time. And it was basically just planted on glued styrene, and it just wasn't doing it. So I chiseled it off, and spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do to replace it. And I was inspired by a 1963 Corvette Stingray. I got these gills or flush vents on the side of it, very iconic. And I thought, there it is. And I stole that idea and basically built flush vents that continue on from the sides of the impulse into the dorsal. It kind of blends it together. And that's where that idea came from. But there are things like that will bug me for a long time. And if they bug me, then I got to remove them and replace them with something else. And that was one case where it just wasn't making it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Makes sense. But one obvious question I've had, why did you name her the Shangri-La? It's a very odd name for a ship. It's kind of outside the norms of Federation design. And why do you think, because we try and put this into canon, why do you think Starfleet would have named a class the Shangri-La?
I'm frequently surprised when people say they're not familiar with the name. Shangri-La has been a name in my mind for a long time, and used it as a starship for a long time. Shangri-La was the name of the 12th World War II SS-class aircraft carrier. It was launched in 1944, and this name came from the Hilton novel. And FDR had joked with reporters in 1942 following the Doolittle secret raid on Tokyo, asking where this raid had been launched from, and he referenced this faraway fictional place. The public had no knowledge of the Hornets' involvement, and that's where that's who had launched the attack on Tokyo until much later, and until the Hornet had been lost and the service records had been revealed. But the Shangri-La itself was, as an aircraft carrier, a response to of the public and a national-wide sales drive of war bonds and stamps to build her directly from the funds of the American people. And so it was a pretty well-known aircraft carrier at the time. And you look at all the names of Starfleet vessels, they pull out of their names from American ships, and typically aircraft carriers. You take Enterprise, Yorktown, Saratoga, Lexington, Essex, and Intrepid. These are all names from American naval history, and Shangri-La is in that list. And it's probably not that well known, but the name is very steeped in naval tradition, history, heritage, culture, fiction, and spirit. So I think it fits the ship.
What sort of reaction have you got from the fans about this ship so far? I know it was a big hit at Wonderfest, and you won our contest, so it must be something fantastic. What kind of feedback have you got?
It's been very positive. I was very surprised that it's captured as much attention as it has, and I'm just overwhelmed by the popularity of it. And if it made demands for people for it to be made into a kit form, and that might happen at some point.
Cool.
So if you could pick one thing that you would change or incorporate into a refit, maybe, because we always love refit designs, what would that be? And of course, lastly, what is your favourite and least favourite thing about this design?
I think the cutout of the hull, the primary, which initially drew me to the project. I mean, it was kind of like a neat thing. Wow, it was a kind of a cool shape and a neat thing to do to the hull. It just felt unfinished to me. And I think a lot of people, they say they don't like about the ship, it's that cutout. But it makes sense because of the way the shape of the impulse and how close the cells are to the hull. It makes sense for those cutouts to be there. But that's why I left room for a Ranger variant, which takes care of those little fillets or cutouts and kind of fills them in a little bit. And I eventually did that as a solution on the Wasp when I built that, and I filled those areas with little winglets and maneuvering thrusters. I think I like the impulse deck. I think that turned out pretty well. Just the overall profile from the side view is kind of a neat thing. It's just kind of a mean-looking ship. I mean, it didn't intend it to be, but I want it to be very compact and kind of sleek and a little bit rugged. And I think the overall look kind of lent itself to be called an attack cruiser. I think originally kind of going for a light cruiser, something smaller than the Enterprise, but I think it kind of lent itself into something a little more aggressive than just a light cruiser.
Well, now we might as well talk about what we like and don't like, Samuel, real quick. First of all, I love like you said, the profile looks amazing, and so does the top view. It's just an aggressive, mean-looking ship, very capable. As for what I don't like, that's tough. It might have to be the impulse deck, actually, the part that you really do like. I don't know. It looks kind of off from some angles to me. It just looks too bulky and kind of misplaced. But I totally understand why it's there and why it's designed like that. But it's just something I don't know, change the geometry of a little bit, maybe. I don't know. That's just me. Samuel, you're
Well, I'm while I'm looking at the 3D animation I made, I'm thinking about what I like and don't like. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic design. It's very different, but very same. You know, it's got so many, it shows how you can take the geometry that we feel familiar and yet push it into a much more modernistic. I mean, this is the sort of design that you might come up with if somehow this was built now. Like, this is something I think CBS would design to be the new, in between era show and ship. And I love the impulse engines. I think the size works really well for design. Seeing them nicely bright lit red. Things I don't like. Well, I don't know. I mean, the secondary hull's a bit odd. It's so different. It's very organically sort of circular. It goes against kind of the more subtle curves of the refit. So I think it might push it a little bit too far, but not really, because it's meant to be so different. Small thing, but it's just very aesthetically different. And maybe just the lack of detail on the back of the secondary hull on the bottom. That's really it. There isn't much to not like. It's a great design that fits in overall. Yeah. So a great design.
Cool. And I have one last question it's a very important question. If you could be any tree, what color would you be?
Spaghetti.
Awesome. That's all we have to say about that. Okay. Well, I was lucky enough to see the ship in person a year ago at Wonderfest and meet you as well, Bill. So I feel a little honored to flesh the ship out and be part of its design and side canon history. On behalf of us here at Trekyards, I would like to thank you, Bill, for designing such a fantastic ship, and of course for joining us here today to discuss it and share it with everyone out there in YouTube land.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure being with you guys.
Cool. And if any of you guys watching the show today have designed a ship and would like us to give it that complete Trekyards Originals treatment, like you saw today, then please email us at trekyards@hotmail.com or private message either Stuart or myself on Facebook. We have a number of different options available to you, and we can fill you in as needed. So yeah, email us if you want anything from that.
In the meantime, please join our group on Facebook to learn all about ships like this, as well as all canon and non-canon ships. And of course, have great discussions with other Trekyards fans and like-minded ship lovers as well. We also encourage you to visit our Patreon and consider donating on a monthly basis to help us out to produce this show for you. If Patreon isn't quite your thing, you can always go over to our website at trekyards.com and click that big donate button. So until we see you next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Kamal Cockings, and
I'm Bill Krause.
Bye, everybody. See you soon.
bye, guys.